I bet you think you are this thing. Everyone thinks they are, but when we actually stop and look at people's lives, there are very few people actually like this. What am I talking about? Well, it's kindness. When we actually do stop and think about it, are our hearts and our thoughts always that kind? Well, I'm going to be finding random people. Strangers. Don't do this at home, kids. Although, if there are strangers in your home, I don't know, call the police. Anyway, I'm going to be finding some random people. There are 3 questions I'm going to be asking them. What does kindness mean to them? What is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for them? And finally, what is the kindest act they could possibly imagine? Let's see what they say. Guys, I'm filming an assembly for my school. Do you want to be in it? Alright, I'm here with Callum, and I'm going to ask him some questions. So, what's your name, by the way? Siobhan, wonderful. I'm Josh. I'm here with Eliza. And I'm going to ask her 3 quick questions. Eliza, I've forgotten the question. What is the question? The first question is, what would you say kindness is? What does kindness mean to you?
It's the act of doing something nice just because you care about someone, just putting someone else before you. That's how I think of it.
Yeah.
So, I would say it is treating other people as you'd like to be treated yourself, and putting yourself in their shoes. And, thinking about, if I was in that situation, how would I like to be treated?
The first question is, what is kindness to you? What does kindness mean to you?
Kindness to me means putting someone else before yourself.
Wonderful, yeah. I wonder how you would answer that question. What does kindness mean to you? Or how do you define kindness? If you were to describe it and what it looks like, what would you say? Well, I think the answers that Siobhan, Eliza and Callum gave were pretty fantastic. Serving other people, giving of yourself for someone else. That's what it is to be kind. Not to be self-centered, just looking inward, but looking out to others. Now, there are so many ways we can be kind, aren't there? It might be a small thing. Maybe in school it's something like picking up a pencil that someone dropped in class. Or even holding the door open for someone. Or maybe it's a big thing. Maybe it's something like sticking up for someone who's being picked on. Or it's just being there for someone who's on their own. There are so many ways that you and I can be kind and show kindness to others around us. Now, maybe you're thinking, Josh, why are you sat in a tree? Do you just like trees? Well, I do love trees, but the reason I'm in a tree is because showing kindness is a lot like planting a seed. You know, you don't just get a big old tree like this, like that. It comes from the tiniest seed. And this always blows my mind. I mean, think of like how big an acorn is. And then that little thing eventually grows into all of this and that and leaves, and it's amazing. Something so small can grow into something so big. That's what your kindness can do for other people. You plant that little act of kindness and you'll be surprised how big it can grow. It makes me think of something that Paul, a Christian who lived 2,000 years ago, wrote in a letter to a church in Ephesus. And he wrote this in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 32. He said, "Be kind to one another, be tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ forgave you." Now, what does that mean to be tender-hearted? It means to have a heart that is soft and warm and open and kind. I wonder, is your heart like that? Or is it more often than not stony and hard towards other people and closed off? What is your heart like? Is it tender? Do people know that? Do people see that and feel that from you when they interact with you? Would they say, yeah, they're a kind person, they're a tender-hearted person? I know that if someone wronged them, they'd be ready to forgive. I wonder, is that you? Even if you think the answer to that would be no, it's not the end. You see, make a difference isn't just about you making a difference for others. The difference might be starting in your own heart. Think about that today. What can you do to start a change? What can you do today to change your life? On to question 2. Alright, second question is, what is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
That's a tough question.
Yeah. What is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
I'm actually really lucky because I've had lots of kind things. And kind things to me could be just something that I turn up for work and I'm having a bad day and someone notices it and makes me a nice cup of tea.
Yeah.
Or it could be something like I've injured myself, which I've done quite often, and someone's gone out the way to help me because they've seen I've with their hurt.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so one of my friends came and picked me and my family up. None of us could drive. To go and see a relative who was ill. So that was middle of the night. Give him a call.
Oh,
he was there straight away.
Wonderful.
So it's the same thing. Put us first before him. So yeah, that was
amazing.
That was
cool. What's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you?
It's really difficult to think because there's so many little things that you think, oh, that was kind. But then there's the big things.
Yeah.
I get quite deep now. My mum picked up COVID when she was in hospital at the end of January. The doctor that rang us up, rang me up to tell me how she was incredibly nice. Explained exactly what her situation was.
Yeah.
How gave me a call to come up. I was living in Devon, to come up and be with her.
Yeah.
So I drove up from Devon, and I didn't know if she'd still be alive by the time I got there. It's a 7-hour journey. But she was, so I went in, and we didn't think at that time we'd be allowed to go in and visit. But they allowed us to go in and one at a time sit with my mum for as long as we wanted.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And they would sit with her all through that night, pray with her. And the nursing, so she was carried on through that week. She was not quite lucid, but she was still able to speak. And the nursing staff, they were so kind, they were so nice to us. She was in a ward with 6 other ladies who were probably all in a similar situation, close to death. But I think at that time my mum was probably the worst. And then unfortunately, while she was in hospital, she picked up COVID and she got moved on to a COVID ward. And she wasn't responding to treatment. And we thought, well, all she'd been asking for during that week was to be taken home. And we thought, well, then let us take her home now. And then when she reached a point where she wasn't responding to treatment and there was nothing more they could do, they did everything they could so that we could get her home within 4 hours. We had a hospital bed at home. The district nurses were set up to come in and visit her, and we were able to look after her at home.
Oh, wonderful.
Until she passed.
Yeah.
So,
thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Thinking about what the 3 of those people said, especially Siobhan, really brings it home how amazingly important and life-changing kindness can be. Especially after these 2 past crazy years with the virus and restrictions, acts of kindness like that, I feel, have become so much more valuable to people. I wonder how you'd answer that second question. What is the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for you? Now, a few things might come to your mind, maybe. Maybe you think of certain people, certain events, certain circumstances in your past, where someone has been so kind. And you didn't really deserve it. You didn't think that they would do that. And yet they did it. And they were so kind to you. Can you think of something like that? When we think of those times, it warms our hearts, doesn't it? We think of how amazingly kind someone chose to be for us. How incredible. You know, every time we think of things like that, our hearts get warmed and it feels amazing to be valued and loved in that way. I wonder, does anyone think of you in that way? When they answer that question, are you their answer? When they think back at a time where you were so kind and so loving and considerate for them? Does anyone think of you like that? And do you give them reason to think of you like that? Now, when I think of this question and I think about kindness, it always reminds me of this incredible story from the Bible. It's about David. You know David, right? The guy who slung his sling and hit Goliath, the big giant, and killed him, David and Goliath. That same David. Now, he was just a shepherd boy, but God had said that he would one day be king of Israel. Now, the current king of Israel was a guy called Saul. He was a wicked, evil king, and he hated David. He even chased David and hunted him down for most of David's life. David spent years on the run from King Saul. But eventually, Saul died in battle, and David was crowned the king. Now, back then, when you were king or queen, one thing you'd have definitely done is killed off any rivals to your throne. If anyone was a threat, anyone was an enemy, you'd get rid of them as soon as you could. Now, one day, King David said to his servants, one servant in particular named Ziba, who used to serve King Saul, he said, "Is there anyone left of Saul's family?" And Ziba said, "Yeah, actually, there is one guy. He's lame in his feet, or paralyzed in his feet, and his name is Mephibosheth." What a cracking name. And Mephibosheth was, as I said, paralyzed in his feet. He was a grandson of King Saul. And David said, "Do you know where he is?" And Ziba said, "Yeah, I know where he is." "Bring him to me," King David said. So Ziba and his men went to collect Mephibosheth and brought him before King David. Now Mephibosheth fell down before the king. Imagine what he was feeling at that point. He would know all the terrible things that his grandfather Saul had done to David. He would know that he'd likely be killed. And Mephibosheth must have felt terrified. He fell before him and said, What do you want with your servant, O king?" And David said, "Do not fear. Have no fear, Mephibosheth, because I'm not going to kill you. Instead, I'm going to adopt you. I'm going to show you a kindness that you've never ever known. I'm going to give you back all of the land that your grandfather, King Saul, once owned. And I'm going to make you like a son of mine. You're going to sit at my table and eat the food that I eat. You're going to be one of mine, in my family." And Mephibosheth was amazed. He was so confused, but excited and astounded that King David would do that for him. And Mephibosheth said, "Who am I that you would look upon me? I'm just a dead dog," is what he said. I'm just worthless. There's nothing good in me. Why are you giving me such kindness? And David said, I'm doing this for you. I'm showing you this kindness because it's the kindness of God. Mephibosheth, this kindness that I'm showing you isn't just my kindness. It's the kindness of God. Now, what does David mean by that? Well, keep that in your mind, because it's time for question 3. Finally, as the last question, what is the kindest act you could ever possibly imagine someone else doing for another person?
Yeah, I think it's these people that kind of put other people first before themselves.
Yeah.
Like the doctors on the front line and the nurses and
Mm.
all those people that look after us.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And last question
Go on.
is, what is the kindest act that you could ever imagine someone doing for someone else?
Probably something like giving one of your organs to
Mm.
someone like that, really
Okay,
putting
yeah.
yourself out to save someone's life,
Yeah.
which would mean an awful lot to them.
Mm.
But kindness means different things to different people.
Mm.
So I think just being aware of that, what kindness means, 'cause you
Yeah.
can just change someone's day or someone's life by that little act of kindness.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
That's excellent.
No worries.
What is the kindest possible thing that you could imagine one person doing for someone else?
Kindest possible thing. I'd say it'd be like, I don't know, literally like saving someone's life or something like that. If we're being dramatic, we're going
Yeah.
to the highest amount of kindness. It'd be like saving someone's life and risking your own at the same
Yeah.
time. So yeah.
Excellent. Cool.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. I'd take your hand, but COVID and stuff.
Ah,
so
no,
thank you.
yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Anyway, thank you.
You too. Thank
no
you.
problem.
Now, they're really interesting answers. Giving your organ away for someone else, or even going so far as to give your life to save another person. I mean, that's a kind of kindness on a totally different level, right? I wonder how you would answer that question. You know, if you were to ask me those 3 questions, what is kindness to me? What's the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for me? And what's the kindest possible act that I could ever imagine? You know, the 3 answers would be the same thing. I'd answer those questions with what David said. The kindness of God. And you know, this very same kindness that David knew is the kindness that I know today. And it's this, that even though I'm weak and helpless like Mephibosheth, and even sinful and an enemy of God, He has given me a kindness that is beyond anything you could possibly imagine. You see, we all know this word that the Bible talks about, sin. We all know sin, we know what sinner, but would it shock you if I said that I am a sinner? And even that you are a sinner? You see, when the Bible talks about sin, it kind of means a crime against God. Sinning is where we prefer something else other than the Creator who we were made for, and we throw everything back in His face. It's breaking His laws. It's a crime against the one who gives us our breath. God is the very one giving me breath right now to speak to you. And you know what? It's kind of God to even give me that breath. I don't even deserve that breath. You see, my sin is so bad before God that it deserves a punishment. And you might be thinking, okay, wait, hang on. What are you talking about? Why does sin deserve a punishment? I mean, you're a good person, Josh. You haven't done anything that bad. But you see, we often see sin as a small thing, a small act. But in God's eyes, it's it's so different. You see, I could flick a log. It's a small little thing, a flick. And if I flick a log, nothing's going to happen. I mean, no one's telling me off. Nothing happens. The log doesn't fight back. I'm fine. What if you stepped it up a bit? You take the same small little action, but you flick, I don't know, a dog. What would happen then? Well, the dog might bite you, the owner might shout at you. What if you stepped it up a bit more? The same small little action. What if I flicked you? I won't, don't worry. Well, I'd get told off by so many different people. Yeah, it wouldn't go well. Step it up one more. Small little act. What if I flicked a policeman? Well, I'm getting arrested then. What if I flicked Boris Johnson? Well, I'd get probably a few cheers, but then definitely get arrested. What if you flicked the Queen? I mean, that's head chopping off stuff. You see, the act might seem small, but do you see that the thing that it's against, the person that it's against, changes the consequence? The more important and high up the person, the greater and more severe the punishment. And you know, even though we might see sin as this small little thing that doesn't really matter, when I sin, it's against God, the highest person there is, the one who created everything, the one who gives me my life and breath, the one who decides whether I breathe. And sin is a crime against him. And my sin is so terrible that it deserves punishment from him. And you might say, whoa, hang on. Today's all about kindness and forgiveness, right? If God is so loving and forgiving, then surely he'll just forgive me of all my sin and just let it go. Well, imagine if some guy came up right now, beat me up and killed me. He gets arrested and taken to court. He's before the judge, and he says to the judge, "No, Judge, I know you're kind and you're a loving person. I've done so many good things in my life. Can you just let me go?" None of us would stand for that, right? We'd say that's completely unjust. That's not justice. That's not right and good and fair. The right, good, fair, just thing is for that guy's crime to be punished. You know, if a human judge is that just, then how much more just should God be? Because God is good, because God is loving, he has to punish my sin. He can't just let it go. So, what do I do? What hope do I have? Well, that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the story. And that kindness that David showed Mephibosheth, that kindness of God, is the kindness that God showed to me. Because he didn't just leave me in my sin, but instead he decided to make a rescue. Jesus came to earth as a man, but he was also God. He came just like you and me in a body and lived the lives that we live. He knew the fears and the heartache that we know, but with one difference. All the times we give in to temptation, all the times we sin and do wrong, Jesus never did. So the punishment hanging above my head was never above Jesus' head. He was completely pure and innocent and spotless, and I'm covered in sin. And then Jesus did the most kind thing you can possibly imagine. The Creator, the most pure, holy being in existence, gave his life for a piece of dirt like me. Jesus willingly gave up his life. He was beaten and bruised and cut. And the wrath and anger and punishment from God that should be mine, Jesus took that bullet for me so that I can be free and forgiven when God looks at me. That's the kindness of God. That's what David was talking about. That's the kindness that I know in my life. And it goes beyond everything else you could imagine. That God, who should rightly send me to hell, instead pays my debt for me and gives me the free gift of heaven when I trust in him. That is kindness on another level. That is a kind of hope that surpasses everything. And in these past 2 crazy years where everyone's been so confused and scared and wondering what is going to happen, that kindness of God is like a rock underneath your feet. And you know that no matter what happens on earth in this life, you've got heaven secure, 100% guaranteed. That is the kindness of God. That for anyone who believes in Jesus and trusts him, God gives them eternal life. You don't have to earn heaven. In fact, you can't earn heaven. You can't earn God's forgiveness. The only way you get it is when he gives it to you like a gift. It's the most incredible act of kindness that there has ever been. And in a world of hopelessness, that is a hope that gets you through any storm.